The Grand Canyon is not a playground. It is a mile-deep chasm, carved over 6 million years by forces that do not recognize human ambition, social media clout, or youthful invincibility. And yet, every single year, people walk up to its edge and treat it as though it were nothing more than a backdrop for photographs. This is the story of 5 hikers who did exactly that, and the canyon taught them a lesson that most of them would not survive to remember. But every element of this story, the arrogance, the ignored warnings, the tragic outcome, has happened in some form at this canyon, more times than anyone cares to count. The Grand Canyon claims an average of 12 lives per year. Many of those deaths are entirely preventable. This story is about the kind of people who make them inevitable. The group arrived on a warm Saturday morning in late September. 5 friends, all in their late 20s, all physically fit, all experienced in what they called outdoor adventure. They had hiked portions of the Appalachian Trail. They had summited peaks in Colorado. They had thousands of followers across multiple social media platforms, and they had come to the Grand Canyon not to humble themselves before one of the great natural wonders of the world, but to conquer it, to use it, to turn it into content. From the very first hour, their attitude set them apart from other visitors. At the South Rim Overlook, while families read the interpretive signs and couples stood quietly absorbing the sheer scale of the canyon, this group was loud, performative, and already pushing limits. One member climbed onto a stone wall, clearly marked as a boundary. Another leaned backward over a railing to capture what she called a vertigo shot. A father nearby, holding his young daughter's hand, asked them politely to be careful. They laughed. One of them told him to relax, that they had done this 100 times before. They had not done this before. Not here. Not at a place where a single misplaced step can send a human body tumbling over 1,000 feet of vertical limestone before it even reaches the first ledge. The Grand Canyon is deceptive. Its beauty creates a false sense of familiarity. People see the wide trails, the paved overlooks, the gift shops and shuttle buses, and they unconsciously categorize the canyon as a managed experience, a theme park with geology. But just 3 feet beyond the railing, the canyon becomes exactly what it has always been, an indifferent, vertical wilderness where the margin for error is measured in inches and the penalty for miscalculation is death. By midday, the group had moved onto the Bright Angel Trail, one of the most popular and well-maintained routes in the park. The trail is wide, clearly marked, and lined with signs warning hikers about the dangers of heat, dehydration, and overexertion. Every few hundred yards, the National Park Service has posted explicit guidance. Do not attempt to hike to the river and back in a single day. Carry sufficient water. Turn around if conditions deteriorate. These signs are not suggestions. They are written in the accumulated wisdom of decades of rescues, injuries, and fatalities. The group read the signs and dismissed them. One member photographed a warning placard and posted it online with a caption mocking its tone. Another pointed to the illustrated figure on the sign, a cartoon hiker in distress, and joked that it looked nothing like them. They carried minimal water. They wore fashionable hiking attire that prioritized aesthetics over function. And most critically, they had no intention of staying on the designated trail. About 2 miles down the Bright Angel Trail, the group began to notice narrow social trails, unauthorized paths created by previous hikers who had also wandered off the main route. These informal trails are some of the most dangerous features in the canyon. They lead to unstable terrain, crumbling rock faces, and exposed ledges that have never been assessed for safety by anyone. Park rangers actively discourage their use. Signs warn against leaving the trail. But for this group, those faint paths through the scrub represented exactly what they were looking for: exclusive viewpoints that other hikers were too timid to reach. The first detour took them about 200 feet off the main trail to a narrow rock outcropping that jutted over a dramatic drop. The view was, by all accounts, spectacular. They spent 20 minutes there, cycling through poses, shooting video, adjusting angles. One member sat on the edge with his legs dangling over a 400-foot void. Another did a handstand within arm's reach of the drop. They were ecstatic. This was the content they had come for. A pair of older hikers passed on the main trail and called out to them, warning that the rock they were standing on was visibly fractured. The group waved them off. One of them shouted back that they could see the cracks and they were fine. The older couple shook their heads and continued walking. They would later tell park rangers that they had a terrible feeling about the group, but did not know what else they could have done. Emboldened by their first successful detour, the group pushed further. Each new social trail they found led them deeper into unmarked, unassessed terrain. They scrambled over boulders that shifted beneath their weight. They sidestepped along narrow ledges with nothing but air below them. They filmed everything. At one point, a member of the group dislodged a rock the size of a basketball and watched it fall for what witnesses estimated was nearly 6 full seconds before it disappeared into the canyon below, without a sound reaching back to them. 6 seconds of free fall. The mathematics of that are sobering. A 6-second fall covers roughly 570 feet. The rock that fell could have struck another hiker below. It could have triggered a slide, but the group treated it as entertainment. They cheered. They replayed the video. The final decision came in the late afternoon, when the light in the canyon was turning gold and the shadows were deepening along the western walls. The group had identified what appeared to be a dramatic ledge roughly 100 feet below and to the west of their current position. To reach it, they would need to descend an unmarked slope of loose sandstone and shale, navigate a narrow shelf of rock that curved around a blind corner, and step onto what looked, from above, like a solid platform extending over the canyon. They went, all 5 of them. The descent was treacherous. The loose rock slid beneath their feet with every step. 2 members nearly lost their footing on the way down, but they pressed on, driven by the image of the ledge ahead and the content it promised. When they reached the narrow shelf, they moved single file, pressing their backs against the canyon wall, their heels inches from the edge. When the first hiker rounded the blind corner and stepped onto the platform, it held. For approximately 4 seconds. The rock beneath was not a solid ledge at all. It was a thin overhang of Kaibab limestone, undercut by centuries of erosion and freeze-thaw cycles, attached to the canyon wall by a margin that geologists would later estimate at no more than a few inches of intact rock. It had been waiting to collapse, not for these hikers specifically. The canyon does not wait for anyone. But the added weight was the final variable in an equation that physics had been solving for a very long time. The platform fractured and gave way. The first hiker fell immediately. The second, who had been stepping onto the ledge behind him, was carried over when the rock beneath her feet disintegrated. The third managed to throw himself backward against the wall, but the shelf he was standing on, now compromised by the collapse of the adjoining rock, crumbled within seconds, and he went over as well. The 4th and 5th members of the group, still on the approach slope, watched the collapse happen in real time. One of them later described the sound as something she would never be able to forget. A deep grinding crack followed by silence, then distant impacts that echoed off the canyon walls for what felt like an eternity. The 4th hiker, in a state of shock, attempted to descend to the collapsed site and lost his footing on the now even more unstable slope. He fell roughly 60 feet onto a narrow ledge below, sustaining injuries that would prove fatal before rescue teams could reach him. The 5th and final member of the group survived. She remained on the slope, unable to move, screaming for help until her voice gave out. Other hikers on the Bright Angel Trail heard her cries and alerted park rangers. A helicopter rescue operation extracted her just before dark. She was physically uninjured, but profoundly traumatized. 4 people died that afternoon. 4 people who had ignored every warning, mocked every precaution, bypassed every barrier, and overridden every instinct that should have told them to stop. They were young. They were fit. They were experienced hikers. And none of that mattered. Because the Grand Canyon does not grade on a curve. It does not care about your fitness level, your trail resume, or your confidence. It is a geological feature of immense indifference, and it will kill the cocky just as efficiently as it will kill the careless. The warning signs at the Grand Canyon are not decorations. The barriers are not challenges to overcome. The designated trails are not suggestions for the timid. They are the accumulated knowledge of generations of people who have walked this landscape and learned, often through tragedy, where the ground is stable and where it is not. To ignore that knowledge is not bravery. It is not adventure. It is vanity dressed up as courage, and the canyon will expose the difference every single time. Every year, the pattern repeats. Young, confident, physically capable people arrive at the Grand Canyon and decide that the rules apply to everyone except them. And every year, the canyon reminds the world that there is no app, no filter, no amount of followers that will hold up a crumbling ledge. Respect the signs, stay on the trail, and remember that the most dangerous thing you can bring to the edge of the Grand Canyon is the belief that you already know enough.